Hello viewers, today we will be discussing the topic Mutual Interdependence between State and Economy, Traditional Views. The entire debate about the relationship between state and economy and their relative importance never ceases to be topical, and the end is nowhere in sight. The entire debate revolves around two major viewpoints. First, the views held by the traditional scholars, and the second part of the debate is the modern views. In this module, we will be focusing on the traditional views on the mutual interdependence between state and economy. Students, since the days of Adam Smith, we know that the invisible hand needed some form of the state. Liberals advocated the view of a laissez-faire theory where the minimum state model should be accepted. That state is the best that governs the least. The market should be free of state control, but then some form of a state was necessary. State that was needed in order to maintain legal structures to manage the protection and promotion of a proper legal system. However, contrary to the liberal school of thought, we have the welfare school of thought. The proponents of welfare economics will wish for progressive taxation and redistribution of income. Keynes' mission to save capitalism meant an increase in the importance of the state and appearance of a new stabilizing role of the state. Excessive unemployment could be prevented by fine-tuning. Unfortunately, Keynes' critique from the public choice camp will say that the state is not perfect and as a rule falls into the trap of asymmetry. Only and solely in theory will it apply that a perfect state means the perfect functioning of an imperfect market. Now we need to understand how the role of the state and the interdependence of the state with the economy can be studied. From the traditional perspective, we can see there are four major views on the role and mutual interdependence between state and economy. The four scholars working on the mutual interdependence between state and economy are mercantilism, physiocracy, classical liberalism, and neoclassical liberalism. Let us start with the mercantilism and the views put forward by the mercantilist scholars. We will start off with Thomas Hobbes's observation of the need for an absolute sovereign state. Thomas Hobbes's doctrine insists that the existence of a strong and absolute sovereign authority for a peaceful and civilized life. An alternative to a strong sovereign state was needed because man, according to Hobbes, was basically selfish and self-centered. The state of nature, that is the nature of the society before the coming of the state, was one of solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, according to Hobbes. Therefore, in order to end wars, fighting amongst people, what was needed was a very strong and absolutist state. Now, what was the role of the market here? Hobbes's dilemma was a state or anarchy, which one to choose from. Time will turn this illusory dilemma into an actual dispute. Do we need a more state or less state according to Hobbes? The mercantilist answer to this question is much more and more state. Mercantilism believes that gold and silver represent wealth, and when wealth can be increased only through foreign trade, which can be active or passive, there is no choice but to restrict imports and encourage exports. The state, therefore, has to play a first-class role in conducting the pulling money into the country policy. Mercantilism is often described as a resourceful and lucky blend of commercial and ruling interest. The symbiotic relationship between large merchants and rulers manifested in privileging and protecting merchants primarily from foreign but also from domestic competition, enabling them to generate revenues which through taxation fills the treasury of the ruler. Standing armies were extremely expensive and wars were extremely expensive also. Wars in those days were also frequent. Therefore, Colbert the finance minister of Louis XIV, one of the most famous names in French mercantilism, will argue that trade is a source of public finance and finance was a means of warfare. So you needed a strong treasury in order to fight wars. In order to increase wealth, mercantilist state resorts to detailed regulation of manufacturing techniques in order to ensure quality of domestic products which will satisfy primarily foreign buyers. If you remember, the mercantilist state would focus more on exports than on imports. Thus, Colbert will prescribe that fabric produced in Dijon must contain 1408 fibers. This implies that the state will actually focus on detailed analysis of the products, raw materials to be used. Such would be the all-pervasive control of the state on the market. Definitely, according to the mercantilist understanding, the state has the right as well as the duty to intervene in economic life with the aim to reach a certain predetermined economic impact both for the individual as well as for the community, which would not be achieved without the intervention because economic life would have gone in another direction. Thus, the mercantilists favor a very strong and absolutist state system. What are the features of mercantilism? Firstly, mercantilism believed in the ability of the state to direct economic life, and in the wake of that belief, they have turned into, as modern economists say, rent seekers. Monopolistic privileges protecting from foreign competition with the help of the state have allowed merchants to generate very high profits. Alliance between traders and state would mean a very strong state treasury system. It is evident that here private interest of one group of people was identified and this was declared as the interest of the whole society. Now, mercantilism was based on certain assumptions. The first assumption was that the power of a good and praiseworthy economy consisted of two parts, namely that both sides, the ruler as well as the subjects, would enjoy prosperity as well as what belonged to them should be with them. Then the rulers must be respected. They should be given due respect and obedience to the subjects, what Hobbes called an absolute sovereign entity. But then again, the ordinary man must have protection and defense. Peace, they have to be given attention, discipline must be held, rulers have to build school and improve crafts. So it was an absolutist state that the mercantilists were believing in. Power was given to the rulers by God, not to use it to scare fair and honest people, but to punish those who do evil. Thus, they also believed in the divine right theory of the formation of the state. The word God requires that rulers do not abuse their powers to their advantage, as is unfortunately often the case, but to use it for the benefits of their subjects. Now, while mercantilists believe in a very strong, powerful state which derives its power from God and therefore they have to take care of the subjects, let us see what physiocracy has to say about the relationship between state and economy. Physiocracy wants less state. This is completely opposite to the mercantilist view of the relationship between state and economy. French mercantilist regulations eventually considered them to be counterproductive. Namely, the rules governing the manufacture of some goods prohibited experimentation, innovation, and improvement of manufacturing techniques in general. Moreover, these rules become redundant due to increased competition, numerous trade privileges granting monopolies and restrictions of internal trade will also cause the physiocrats' revolt. So the physiocrats believe that the mercantilist model of state economy perspective does not lead to innovations in the market. Colbert's policy was too close to trading interests. Teaching about natural order has the central position in the physiocratic training. Human society is controlled by the natural order. Natural laws which were set by benevolent providence for the benefit of humankind. Here it was believed that nature should be given a role to play and over control by the state should not be allowed. The physiocratic concept of natural order takes into account that laws that are superior to the laws of any monarch will automatically govern human affairs. This means that natural laws are superior than state-made laws. State intervention in terms of granting monopolies, various regulations in forms of trading rights, trading laws, etc., is clearly contrary to the natural order because they are state-made laws. According to the physiocrats, the state has to follow the rule of theological laissez-faire. Things should be left to themselves because they are governed by a higher force that ensures the best possible result. So they want a laissez-faire where the natural course of things would control society, polity, and economy. According to the physiocrats, agriculture gained the dominant position, and because agriculture is only the product of nature and natural order. Agriculture to the physiocrats is a true source of wealth. Other human occupations to them are sterile. For this very reason, physiocratic liberalism meant freedom in the manufacture of trade of goods, reduction or abolition of road tolls, improvement of transport infrastructure, and especially elimination of the tax system that was truly exhausting agriculture, and introduction of a unified tax system on the pure product, that is the pure land rent. The absolute norm of natural laissez-faire was because of the special place of agriculture as an exclusive source of wealth. So, according to the physiocrats, agriculture was the true natural source of wealth for both the state and the market. Replacing mercantile policy with a policy that would favor agriculture and related interests required, despite the principled condemnation of state control and regulation, an active state. Thus, it was believed that a strong state was needed in order to control the agricultural products. But this strong state was not the same as a mercantilist state. It was believed that this imperative of a state should be viewed in the light of physiocratic opposition to all kinds of privileges and many things that were perceived as misuse among other monopolistic positions. Since these cannot be abolished without significant state interference, Quesney had demanded a truly active government policy, and certainly not that it doesn't do anything. So the state is required, but to fulfill a different kind of a role. Furthermore, physiocrats have relaxed the requirements on the restrictions on agricultural production, advocated subsidies for farmers, legal limitations of interest rate so as to reduce the cost of borrowing for landowners, and restrictions on export of manufacturing products, since boosting exports would lower results in lower food prices. So they were not in favor of exporting food grains because they believed that exporting food grains might have an adverse impact on food prices in the domestic market. They still believe in selective interpretation of laissez-faire concept, but that did not diminish the glory of physiocrats as fierce promoters and protectors of economic liberalism. Thus, we have seen that the mercantilists believed in a political economy based on trade, while the physiocrats believed in a political economy based on agriculture. Let us now move on to what the classical economists have to say on the mutual interdependence between state and economy. We start with Adam Smith and his Wealth of Nations. Adam Smith wanted a state much more than a night watchman. He started his analysis with a vigorous criticism of the mercantilist view as well as the physiocrat's view. Let me quote Adam Smith on his views of how should be the relationship between the state and economy. To quote Adam Smith, "If the twig, as the proverb goes, is bent too much to one side, it must be bent as much to the other side in order to straighten it." It seems that the French philosophers who have proposed a system that shows farming as the only source of income and wealth of each country adopted that principle of folk wisdom. As the diligence of cities is certainly overestimated compared to the diligence of villages in Mr. Colbert's plan, it seems that the diligence of cities is certainly underestimated in the system of the French philosophers. Thus, Adam Smith criticized both the trading pattern of the mercantilist as well as the agricultural system of the physiocrats. He further said that incarnation of wealth of nations is not gold or silver money, Nor is it an agricultural product. An economy cannot work only on gold, silver, precious metals, and agriculture. Just as the source of economy is not foreign trade, the source of wealth, according to Adam Smith, is production in general. And wealth of a country is the annual product of both the soil and labor. Smith holds favoring of a very personal private interest, and it's identifying with the societal interest as being harmful for society. There is no place for the privileged in Adam Smith's system of natural liberty. Liberalism to him is secular in nature. It should therefore be followed that for every man to follow their interest in their own way on the liberal basis of equality, freedom, and justice. Human instinct for acquiring and standing out, human endeavor to improve own and the well-being of those closest to him, human selfishness is able to discard ethically and morally acceptable results. According to Adam Smith, the selfish human covered in blood under the skin, wants only and solely his winnings. So, we need to focus on a strong economic system. Adam Smith further elaborates his thesis, saying that an individual usually does not intend to promote the public interest, nor knows how much he promotes it. In that case, as well as in many other cases, he is led by an invisible hand to promote the goal he never intends to achieve. The fact that it was not an individual's interest to promote society's goal is not always worse for the society. Now, when he follows his own interest, he often promotes the interest of the entire society more effectively than when he is indeed trying to promote it. To Adam Smith, self-interest is also a way of promoting the interest of the entire society. According to Smith, human egoism can be put to the surface of public interest. We do not expect lunch out of a benevolence of a butcher, brewer, or baker, but out of their keeping of their own interest. We don't address their humanity but their selfishness, and we never talk to them about our needs but about their benefits. Private interest should not be limited. It should not be directed, since it efforts and harms human creation. It also harms wealth creation in the process. The natural liberty system demands a different role of the state than it was before, especially in the mercantilist or in the physiocratic system. So what is that kind of state? Now, every individual in their local position can judge much better than any other statesman or legislature what type of handicraft can employ their capital and which particular product will have the greatest value. A statesman would attempt to determine how private individuals should use their capital, would not only be burdened by the most unnecessary concern, but would also take power that cannot be safely entrusted not only to any individual, but not to any council or any state, and which would be the most dangerous in the hands of a man who is crazy or vain enough to deem himself competent to exercise it. Now, Adam Smith put forward the principle of natural liberty. Now, this natural liberty system favors a peculiar amalgam of the market and the state, dominant market and subsidiary state. But we hold that the Adam Smith's conceptualization of the state was, however, more than simply the night watchman thesis. Namely, Smith's political economy is exploration of the natural and causes of wealth of nations. Now, Smith's dominant market thesis needs a state that is committed to the ideas of both individualism as well as liberalism. The state cannot govern economic life, but without that visible hand, there is no constructive discharge of energy in private interest. Some theories will go as far as to admit that Adam Smith's invisible hand is in fact the government itself. It is not therefore some deity's hand or God's hand or hand of some natural force independent of human activity. It is the legislator's act, the parliamentarian's act, the hand that prevents private interest from engaging in activities that are contrary to public interest. So the state is needed, the state is necessary. Now, listing the functions of the state, Adam Smith opined that since the market is not an undisturbed good, we need the market and we also need the state in order to regulate the market. His hostile attitude towards monopoly is well known, as well as anticipating the market's inability to produce what will later be called public good by economic theory. Smith's role of the state, therefore, is tied to the function that is today known as allocation of resources. Smith did not challenge the necessity to help the poor, but he did not consider it to be the task of the state. Public redistribution was not the function of the state, but of religious municipalities. Smith did not deem help to the needy as a function of the redistributive state, but a way to avert potential problems related to poverty. So, poverty alleviation to Smith was not the function of the state. Redistribution is also not the function of the state. And finally, there is no place for stabilizing the role of the state in Smith's teaching, and there is also no understanding for the budget deficit in special circumstances. These positions will be the commonplace of economics until Keynes made his revolutionary study on welfare economics. It is therefore different to understand the redistributive role of the state from the perspective of Adam Smith. Let us now try to understand the fourth traditional view, that is neoclassical economics, and how does this envisage the relationship between state and economy. Now, Arthur Pigou tears down orthodox barriers and opens wide the theoretical doors to redistribution functions of the state. He focuses on the role of the state in a much more positive way in terms of welfare functions of the state. The classical doctrine argued that the marginal utility of money for its owner as opposed to marginal utility of other goods does not decline. The established theory furthermore asserted that it is not possible to compare utility, that is satisfaction, of different people. Large quantities of a certain good provides the user with a decreased marginal satisfaction. But it was not possible to say that to a man with more goods, additional quantity of those goods provides less satisfaction than to those who have less quantity of those goods. Feelings of different people are not comparable. Such comparison would be a denial of scientific ways of thinking of which good and prominent economist aspires. Pigou has therefore made a significant contribution with his departure from the direction of classical thought. Following Marshall's teaching, according to which marginal utility of money declines by increasing its quantity, Pigou will argue that greater equality of incomes in certain circumstances may increase economic well-being. Even transfer of income from relatively rich man to a relatively poor man of similar character, since this enables satisfying a stronger need on account of a need of a lower intensity, must increase the total sum of satisfaction. In short, due to the decreasing utility of money, a poor man is in a position to draw greater satisfaction, greater utility from additional income than a wealthier man. It was, as Galbraith has said, a strong support to the redistributive role of the state, the concept of state welfare. However, Pigou is opposed to this classical orthodoxy. He will oppose the idea that what is good for the individual is necessarily good for the society. In this regard, he differentiates marginal social cost and marginal social benefit, and the marginal private cost and marginal private benefit. Marginal private cost directly burdens the producer of an additional unit of a good or service. Marginal social cost is the cost or damage suffered by society because of production of an additional unit of a good or service. Marginal private benefit is determined by the selling price of a good, while marginal social benefit is the total benefit that production of an additional unit of a good brings to the entire society. Now, Please note that social cost can be higher than private cost, as there is a cost in addition to the private which burdens the third adjacent site. In this case, it is a negative externality because the marginal private net product is greater than the marginal social net product. A positive externality occurs when the marginal private net product is smaller than the marginal social net product. In this case, we need to understand that someone is spilling benefit with their activity and rewards benefit to the aforementioned third adjacent site. So when the positive or negative externalities occur, when there is a positive or negative effect for the third adjacent site, the state is obliged to resort to extraordinary measures, extraordinary incentives or extraordinary restraints. Now, what happens when the market fails? Now, when the market fails, when there is a mismatch of marginal private net product and marginal social net product, the state should equalize them by using extraordinary measures such as subsidies, taxes, legal regulations with the goal of increasing prosperity. Pigou was optimistic regarding the ability of the state to correct the mistakes of the market. His theory shows that perfect markets function perfectly. Imperfect market function imperfectly, and that a perfect government can cause perfect functioning of imperfect markets. What have we learned from the 4 different views that we have just studied? Now, we need to understand that the debate about the relationship between the state and the economy does not end with the traditional views. It is not also suggestive of the fact that there is a perfect role for the state and a perfect role for the economy to play in this perfect world. Actual markets are far from real, and actual markets are far away from the role model. However, it is excessive to claim that the invisible hand is invisible because it does not exist. Nobody disputes that the market needs the help of the state. Liberal sympathizers of the market prefer a small state, whose ambitions include only providing a bare minimum legal framework to protect the market. The neoliberal economists are of the view that the state should not just perform the role of a night watchman, it should perform a more redistributive role in the welfare of the entire society. Neither Hayek nor Friedman provide a justification for progressive taxation or distribution of income, but there is no denying that we have to provide a state system, a state structure in order to help the needy. There is certainly more supporters for the welfare state economic theory, where they believe that we need to balance the relationship between the state and the economy. There is interdependence between the state and the economy. The economy needs the state, and the state also needs the economy in order to promote, prosper, and flourish. Thank you.